I always say to people and to my clients, like, we're never going to have the perfect conditions. You've got to take the conditions that you have and make them perfect. I can track back sometimes $65,000, $70,000 to one specific episode because it took off in a way that created like a ripple. We got to give ourselves a chance to be a beginner. And I think as adults and as creators, like, we don't want to be beginners.
Right.
And that's what holds us back. But if we let ourselves be a beginner and let ourselves be scared and let ourselves try it and let ourselves screw up, right? I'm using air quotes, like screw up. Then all of a sudden we can go fast because we had the time where we went slow and we figured it out and we moved through all of that junk.
Hey, quick question before we get started. Would you like to win a free piece of clothing from Snowman Films and a 30-minute chat about your creative journey with me? I know that I would love to connect with you, and I know that I would have loved to talk with somebody who had experienced a similar path when I was getting started. So let's make it happen. Here's what you need to do. Subscribe to the Conversations with Creators podcast, rate and review, and share it in just 5 easy steps. First, write a review on your preferred podcasting platform and rate it. 5 stars for good karma. Then, screenshot your review and share it on social media, tagging Snowman Films. Each month, I'll select one random winner to receive a free piece of clothing from our store and a 30-minute virtual coaching call with me. Again, subscribe, write a review, rate the show, screenshot that review, share it on social media, tagging Snowman Films, and get entered into a drawing for that one-on-one virtual session with me and some free swag. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave me a review. I really appreciate you, and I'm excited to see you in our one-on-one virtual call soon. Now, let's dive into today's episode. So the big question is this: how are creators like us, who aren't built for the 9-to-5, for the people who put their passion before them being comfortable, how do we turn that passion into a living that pays the bills and a life that we love? That is the question. This podcast will give you the answers. My name is Noah Mittman, and welcome to Conversations with Creators. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Creators. My awesome guest today is Betsy Pake. She is a professional public speaker, a best-selling author, and a much more experienced podcaster than me. Thank you for being on the show, Betsy.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and do this with you today.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, we were literally just talking before we were recording about you kind of winning at the podcast game. Kind of tell me how you have. So you just said you just recorded which number of your podcast?
341.
And I'm on episode 8. So yes. I'm very excited to pick your brain.
I know. I have so many thoughts.
Tell me them.
Yeah. It's so funny because, as we started talking, and this is what happens to me too on my podcast, is that somebody will say something and I'll be like, shut,
yeah.
Don't say anything until I start recording.
When you're talking before the show, you're just like, this is great. No, let me just take 10 seconds and intro this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many things I can say about a podcast. And if somebody's listening, like, how do I do the podcast, or how do I start one, or what am I doing? Like, where do you want me to start? Because I have a lot of thoughts for the whole journey.
Yeah. I mean, that was basically just my question on this, was just like kind of tips and advice for me being less than 10 episodes into this, and kind of where you started with it, what you found from the journey, tips, and even things that have it's helped you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to give you just like a minute of backstory of how my podcast started. So my podcast is called The Art of Living Big. And for me, living big is being like the best you can be in your current circumstances. So life isn't always going to be working out the way that you want it to,
right?
But how can you be the biggest in that space? And so years ago, I started the podcast. Well, I don't know. Somebody can do math. 342 divided by 52.
Have you been doing? Yeah, I was gonna say you've been doing it once a week.
Yeah, I do it once a week. Comes out on Thursdays, and so it was about 7 years ago, and it was about 7.5 or 8 years ago when I really wanted to start speaking, which is how you and I met, right? Because I was speaking, and you were recording, and at that time. Yes. Yeah. And at that time in my life, my daughter, who is now an adult and thriving, was sick. And I had this like burning desire, like we do as creators, to create and to build something. And I had learned so much and I had things to share. And so I couldn't get a speaking gig because I didn't know what my agenda would be. Like I never knew what was going to be happening in my life.
Yeah.
And so one day I was driving down the road and I saw a Panera Bread near my house. And I thought they have one of those rooms that has like the closing doors,
Yeah. Private room.
Yeah, private room at the Panera Bread, which is like the hospital food of like fast food. So, so I called and I asked to talk to a super nice manager. And I said, can I come in and once a month come in and speak? And I'll invite people. And he was like, yeah, because everybody will come have coffee. Right.
Right.
So
That's
I started,
genius.
yeah. So on Meetup, I posted a meetup and I said, I'm sponsoring this inspirational speaker every month. Like I just didn't tell them it was going to be me, like
Right.
every
No, that's,
month. Right.
I know that.
Show up.
I know that process so well. Like
Yeah.
it's just a simple change in language from like me to we, even if it's just
Yes.
you, just to seem bigger.
Yes.
That's a
Yeah.
total startup move. I love it.
Yeah. So there I am, like not really able to start my business at all. And now I'm going to the Panera Bread. And the very first time I come, I have like 7 or 8 people.
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, I'm like, 7 or 8 people, like this is huge,
Right. No, yeah, 100%.
And then the next time, like 7 or 8 people, a lot of those people came back and they brought somebody. And then all of a sudden it was 12 people. And then it was 30 people. And then the next month. So it got to be where it was kind of a big, like sort of community. We would meet once a month and I would be the speaker. Right. And so that's when I was like, I want to put this on a podcast.
Yeah.
Like I want to take this from Panera Bread and put it on a podcast, which I call the Art of Living Big. And in hindsight, it should have been like the Panera Bread Diaries or something. You know what I mean? But
No,
the
but the
Art
Art
of
of
Living
Living
Big.
Big is a much more scalable title.
Yes. I probably would
And
have gotten some
7 or 8
copyright
years
infringement.
ago was still relatively early in the podcast game.
I would say. Yeah.
Like they've been around for a little bit, but not where it is now.
Yeah. Yes. And so, my thing was, I'm just going to put one out every week. Like, I might not be able to do a lot of other things, but I'm going to do this every week, every week, every week.
Yeah, because it's
and
doable.
it was so, yes, because it's doable. I could do it. And whenever I could, and then I put it together. And then now the first like 50-ish episodes, I interviewed people.
Okay.
I had things to say, but I think I didn't have my self-confidence high enough, which seems funny to say since I was doing that at Panera Bread, but it just felt different.
Yeah.
Now, the very first time I had 23 people listen to my show. And I will tell you that I was thrilled because if I got 23 people to come to Panera Bread, like that's awesome.
That'd be huge. Right.
It'd be huge. So I always thought of it like if those people came to meet me at Panera Bread, right? What would it look like? This helped me so much because in the beginning, it can take a minute to get some traction.
Yeah. I will say, I have yet to hit 100 downloads, but I'm getting close. Yep. And for
That's
less
good.
than 10 episodes, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, you should be really happy with it. Yeah, totally. And then as I'd have people on, they would share me with their audience. Right. Yeah. And so it started to grow and grow. So in hindsight, although it felt like a little bit of a scaling back to interview people, it was actually a great way to grow my audience.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's my whole, because I've been, this is like my third attempt at podcasting. No, fourth. Because actually the episode the episode 2 episodes prior to yours with Brian, I used to have a show with some friends called The Unfinished Degree, because it was some people that I went to film school with that none of us graduated. And it's fine because we're all working professionals, but like that was a cool thing. So my lesson from that, because it didn't really get off the ground, was like, okay, generally I'm gonna have to just make this happen myself. Because if you're having a team is fine, but it needs to be like as motivated as you are to get it done. And then this, other ones were like a topic that I ended up kind of not, of course I did a whole course creation like podcasting that didn't really get off the ground because it was my response to COVID, and it wasn't like based in like open world, like conversations with creators can go anywhere, which I love. So yeah, no, I feel like the the journey is bumpy for sure, but like you get there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think if you always, one of the things that I have always done, even in the very beginning, was when I started, I thought, what's the intention for this?
Yeah.
Like, do I want to entertain people? Because sometimes the episode is just me telling a story. I
Yeah.
always try to tell meaning, like a story with meaning. So, my podcast is very much like if you heard me speak
Yeah.
at an event, right?
No,
So I
that's
tell
great, but
us,
that's so good, right? That's like such a good uh like preview or promotion for your speaking because it's exactly what they're going to get with you in the room.
well, and practice.
Yeah.
So like now when I look back, I wanted to be a speaker, which is why I went to Panera Bread, which is why I moved to the podcast to get bigger.
Yeah.
And then
Being a
all of a
speaker as a
sudden,
podcast makes total sense.
I was practicing every week.
Right.
So I had a couple years of practice.
Yeah, yeah.
By the time I got hired the first time, I was like incredible because
Yeah,
I
you were
was
like,
like,
I'm
I've
good.
been doing this a long time.
No,
Yeah.
totally.
So
Especially when you like see the numbers, the people listening, you're like, okay, I'm doing like this is public. This is
right.
like I'm
Yeah.
getting in front of people.
Right.
Um,
So now, like when the first day comes and a couple thousand people download it, I'm like, imagine them all in Panera Bread.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
would be thrilled. I'd be like the
that's awesome.
the Tony Robbins of Panera Bread.
You need to like eventually like full circle this back to a Panera
Have a live
location.
event at the
Yeah.
Panera Bread.
Or maybe in front so you can fit more people.
Yeah, parking lot.
I love
Yeah.
that. No, so what percentage of is your show all you now, or do you still have guests on?
I'll have guests occasionally. Typically, if I have a guest, it's like somebody that I know
Yeah.
personally. And although I love other coaches doing their thing, I get pitched a lot. And I can talk about pitches, like what makes a good pitch if somebody
Yes,
is
please.
listening and wants to be
I
on a
need that
podcast.
myself.
Yeah. So when I have somebody on, I don't want somebody that does the same exact thing as me.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's hard for people to understand because it's not a scarcity thing, but it's like a make sense marketing thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if we do the same exact thing, and not speaking, but like I'm a trainer of hypnotherapy
Yeah.
and neuro-linguistic programming. So like I'm not gonna have another trainer on, but I get pitched a lot from those.
That makes sense.
And when I think about pitches, if somebody pitches me and they've actually, it's not a form. So like I can tell right off if it's a form. And if at the bottom it says to unsubscribe, that means you've put me on the list. Like I'm just immediately
They
unsubscribing.
sent it to just a whole bunch of that's hilarious if you haven't
Which is
unsubscribed
like,
from a pitch email.
like, why are you doing that? Yeah. But the
Oh,
ones
I bet
that
that
get
happens a
me,
lot too.
yes. The ones that always surprise me are the ones that are like, this is what happened to me. This is what I can, this is what happened. This is what I did. This is what I do now. This is what the book I wrote. And I get it that you're excited and you want to promote yourself. But my number one priority is my audience.
Right.
And if you're not telling me like
How you can bring value to their audience.
yes, what value are you bringing? I no offense, but I don't care about you or your book. Like,
Yeah.
tell me what good you can share. Like I have a story that can inspire people to do this.
Right.
Oh, now you've got my attention.
Well, it's funny. I'm trying with this. So like I'm in filmmaking and I'm actively trying to not have every single guest be another filmmaker just because like I can geek out about filmmaking every single episode, but the audience is going to get bored with that.
Right.
This is not a filmmaking podcast. This is a creator podcast. And I want to, I'm genuinely interested in talking to all sorts of creators about stuff. Like that's part of why I'm doing this also is just like, it's fun for content, but also like I get to learn more about, I'm genuinely curious about different stuff.
Yeah. I love when there's somebody I want to know more about, I'll invite them on the podcast.
Yeah.
Or like an author that I love.
No, that makes sense.
I love Pam Grout. Do you know who she is?
Who?
You might not know. Pam Grout. So she has written like 28 or 29 books. And she's a Hay House author. So very much like Law of Attraction, but really fun books. And she wrote a book called E Squared that people love that are like experiments you can do to mess with the law of attraction. They're fun. I love her. She's very popular. So anyway, I reached out to her and she was on the show. And then when she was launching her next book, her publicist reached out and said, can she come back? Yeah. And it was so fun. You get to build like friendships with people, that you'd wanted to meet, like if you could meet anybody.
The
Yeah.
funny thing for me too, like in terms of networking wise with this is I heard a couple years ago is like, yeah, listen, like if you're trying to go out to like talk to one of your heroes or whatever, and you're like, hey,
Yeah.
like, can we do like an hour meeting and blah blah blah, and like the answer is probably going to be no on that. But if you say, hey, can you come on this podcast that I have so I can, it's
Yeah.
basically an hour of picking somebody's brain, and it's a higher chance of getting yes because it's the wrapper of a podcast,
Right. Right.
which is
Yes.
genius. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love,
speaking
yeah.
of the
Somebody would have
podcast,
charged me a lot of money to pick
yeah,
their brain.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
With your podcast, kind of launching stuff, and I know kind of the title of it. What does living a big life mean to you?
For me,
Yeah,
that's being the best version of you. So, like when my daughter was sick and I had something in me that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it the way that I wanted to. Instead of that stopping me and saying, I got to wait until things change in my situation before I can take any action, I took the most amount of action that I could, which was going to Panera Bread. And
yeah,
that changed the course of everything. So I always say to people and to my clients, like, we're never going to have the perfect conditions. You've got to take the conditions that you have and make them perfect
hmm,
and grow as much as you can. And to me, that's living big. So that's going to look different at all different parts and sorts of your life.
yeah. No, I love that. That's so. It's funny too because I guess I have that mindset built into me of making the best out of any situation, but having that as a mantra and like teaching other people to do that. Cause I know a fair amount of people that are like
Yeah.
negative and that have a lot of negative things happen to them because I think they're in a negative headspace.
Yeah.
To teach that mindset to the masses is just a huge service.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, like, if everybody was doing something that inspired them,
Yeah.
right? Instead of waiting to do something that inspired them, the world would be different.
Oh,
We talk
100%.
sometime like, oh my God, like I wish I could change. I can't change the world. One person can't change the world. But I think every one person can change the world because they can change themselves. And
Mhm.
that changes the whole world.
It's the whole
Like
kind of ripple effect of how
yes.
you no, absolutely. I completely agree. It's not and you're not
Yeah.
thinking about I love the one is greater than zero mindset. So like
Mhm.
if what you're doing can affect one person over zero, then you're doing great.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean so many people need to hear that, need to like get out of their own way. So no, I mean I
Well,
think that's
and I
fantastic.
think, and I think a lot of creators stop themselves. That right there, they are
Yeah.
a creator. You don't have to be like out sharing your creation to be a creator. You are
Right.
a creator if you have something in you and want to create it. And so many people will just stop because they're like, there's so many people already doing it. I hear that all the time. I'm like, really? Because there's a lot of public speakers out there, but nobody says the same stuff I do because I say my stuff. Like,
Yeah.
tell your stuff, do your stuff. It's going to
It's
be
way
different.
easier to talk yourself out of doing it than to actually just
Yeah.
do it and stick with it and commit to it. It's way easier to be like, oh no, that's stupid.
Yes. It
But
totally. And
it's
anybody that's
needed.
and anyone that's listening to this isn't ordinary. Ordinary people will dismiss and not do it.
Right.
But if you're listening to this, you're not ordinary. So what do you have to believe to take the step to get to the next step and the next step and to do the thing?
You all need to answer that for yourselves now, listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this
I
is part
know.
of why I wanted Betsy on because she's awesome at this.
Yeah. And I think that, when we ask ourselves these questions, our unconscious minds can't not answer a question. And you've probably heard that before, like you are the result of the questions or the quality of questions that you
Mm,
ask, but that's directly what it is because your unconscious mind is going to ask it. So if you're asking like, why can't I do this? It's going to give you reasons why you can't. So, when my daughter was sick and I was like, how could I do this?
right.
How could I do it in a different way? What am I not seeing? How can I still help people? Like, what can I do to expand? Like, ask yourself really good questions and your brain, it'll be like planting a trellis,
Yeah,
and
it's
your
like and
brain will
it
start to crawl up the
literally
trellis. Yeah,
affects your neuroplasticity and like how your brain works and like it'll change
exactly.
your thought patterns. So I think no, I
Yeah.
think I think again, yeah, absolutely. Switching it from why shouldn't I do this, or like why should I do this, and going negative with it. It should be
Yeah.
the why shouldn't I do this?
Yeah.
What, what's stopping me, or why?
Yeah.
Yeah, switch it around.
One of my favorite
Could
things
not finish that
recently.
sentence, but you
Yeah.
hit the point.
Yeah, I got a good idea. One of my favorite things recently is to start every morning. Like the moment I get consciousness, I go, what if today's the day? What if today I feel amazing all day? What if I meet great connections? What if I get this incredible idea? What if?
Yeah, that's a fun place. That's a fun thing to live in.
It's fun.
Is
Yeah.
living in what if all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So after we finished recording, Noah and I started texting and we started talking a little bit about monetizing the podcast. And so I thought I would record something quick just to give you sort of an overview of what I think makes a podcast so powerful and how to really make the most from it. I think a lot of people think I'm going to start a podcast and then the goal is to get marketing dollars, right? To get like advertisers and to get a sponsor for the podcast. And I actually think that that's like the wrong way to go for creators. And I'll tell you why. Because I think you are your best advertisement. And so I only advertise my own stuff. There are times where I have done like a commercial in the middle of my podcast, but most of the time I just talk about what I'm doing and invite people in in a way that's like compelling and interesting and lets them really know why I'm offering the offer that I am and how I think it could impact their lives. And because it's a podcast and a dialogue and people are used to listening to me, there is a level of trust and familiarity. So when I make an offer, it's different than them just seeing an ad, obviously, but it's different than, them just getting an email or just seeing that I'm doing something. They actually hear about it right from me. And one of the things that's fun for me is to kind of track how much I can track back to one specific episode. And the reason that I can do that is because I'll typically be pitching like a specific thing. So if people say like, I heard that podcast, many times I have gotten podcasts or speaking gigs from someone hearing me on the podcast. And so they'll hear me and they'll say, I really want her speaking at my event, and they'll recommend me to the event planner. And then from there, I can make money on my programs and offerings as well. So I can track back sometimes $65,000, $70,000 to one specific episode because it took off in a way that created like a ripple. I was saying to Noah last week, we had an episode where we talked about how we were starting something. I can track back $15,000 and more even that we know is like on the horizon, coming in. People are still enrolling in that program. And so it makes it just like a totally different marketing capacity, a marketing avenue for you. If you stop thinking I want to get sponsorships and start thinking of yourself as the sponsor. So sometimes people will say to me, do you have a sponsor for your episodes or for your podcast? And I'll say, yes, it is me. And it's highly profitable for her. So I think of podcasts as my main marketing source. I am always telling people about the podcast. I'm always moving people to the podcast. So you can use it as your one thing. What's the one thing that kind of defines me and my brand is this podcast. So you can do whatever you want and you can make it move in a way that brings you your income. I derive my income from my podcast, but not from advertising.
What is your connection to the ocean, and what can people gain from having more ocean in their life?
Oh yeah, I'm obsessed with the ocean. So, I live in Atlanta, so not ocean.
Yeah, right.
But I love the ocean, and I will get there probably when I retire. My husband is an attorney and he's licensed in here. So I am here. I keep trying to get him to just like abandon his career, but he's not totally into that. So, But I think that there is something that happens when we stand by the ocean.
Mm.
There's something that happens where we feel so big and so small all at the same time. I think it expands our perception of how grand things are and brings us into how I can impact just a little bit. You know, when I stand on the edge of the ocean, I think there's an energy of those waves that comes. And I don't think it ends when the water ends. I think it continues to go, you know? And so I find some of my best moments, my most incredible thinking moments. And I don't know if you remember any of my speech, but a lot of my speech that I tell is about my moments at the ocean and
Yeah.
lessons that I've learned and how I've experienced myself in a different way. So I just love it's just my zen happy place.
I think it's like the closest. So like, I live in Colorado and I live in the mountains specifically, and being around
Yeah.
trees is great, but it's also, I think the ocean is like the closest you can be to experiencing just earth in its natural state, in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
flow. And that's kind of where my spirituality comes from. It's but the way that I describe it is kind of like Avatar. It's just like everything is
Oh yeah.
connected, and it's
Yeah.
everything is alive, and whatever it is. But like the
Yeah.
ocean is like, oh, like here is nature happening, like
Yeah. Right in front of
in
me.
right in front of me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the mountains are kind of like that when you're really in like the middle of nowhere and you're
Snowboarding.
just yeah, yeah.
Snowboarding's awesome.
Last
Especially
year,
I just started going this last season into more trees, and
yeah.
when you're in and you're just flowing with, you're riding on
Yeah.
the earth with snow and with trees, and
Yes.
just it's like,
It's
and
like
then
the
immediately
surfing
the
of the
resort
ocean,
stuff
yeah.
goes away because there's usually not very many people around you.
Yeah.
And like me and my wife will just go through the trees, and just like hey, you have a little bit of music going, and it's flow state.
Yeah, flow state, that's it exactly, yeah. Yeah. Last year I went to Iceland and, I think I talked about this in the speech you saw, but I
Yeah.
saw a TikTok where a guy was in Iceland or he was in Finland, I think, but the northern lights were going overhead, and so I decided I want that, like, I want that, so cool, and,
It's on my bucket list for sure.
oh man, it was so cool. And so, but being in the mountains like that, where you saw just like beauty for as far as you could see, it's kind of the same thing, right? You feel big and small all at the same time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like when you and there's bigger weather out here, and there's,
Yeah.
when we, like, today's a windy day outside, and sometimes we'll have the trees bending at like, 15, 20 degrees, and you're like, "Oh my God." Like
Yeah.
like you're just at the will of nature. And I mean, living in the mountains has spoiled me because I can never go. We call it going down the hill to like go
Yeah.
back into Denver. And I can never move back there because the mountains have grabbed me and are
Yeah.
not letting go.
Yeah. 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 That's good stuff.
No, it's awesome.
Hey there, fellow creatives. Conversations with Creators dives deep into the minds of successful filmmakers, artists, musicians, and all around awesome people. We are looking for some kick ass sponsors to help us keep this show on the road. If you want to reach a tribe of dedicated listeners who are just as passionate about creating as you are, then look no further. Our audience is full of people who appreciate a good laugh and are always on the lookout for new ways to fuel their creativity. So, let's team up and create some magic together. We'll work with you to make sure that your brand is showcased in the best light possible. And who knows, maybe we'll even become lifelong friends. Just imagine, years from now, we'll be reminiscing about the good old days when we first teamed up to take the world by storm. Send us an email at noah@snowmanfilms.net to say hey and get the ball rolling. Now back to the episode.
So with you getting into public speaking, I know it's kind of like it's always like on the top list of fears for people is public speaking.
Mhm.
Did
Yeah.
were you scared of it when you started, or have you always kind of been at ease and comfortable?
You know what's funny is, when we're little and we play imaginary play, like I know when I was young, a lot of my friends wanted to be teachers, or
Yeah.
when we played, they played teacher. I used to take a Kleenex box and put it up on its end like a podium, and I used to play that I was a speaker.
Wow.
So like that's something I always have wanted. Like I always not even that I wanted to do it. I just knew that's who I was.
Yeah, totally.
That's just who I was. Luckily for all the people that see me now, I don't chew gum, because as a child, I wanted to chew gum. Well, I did it for some weird reason, but that was always my thing. I had to have a piece of gum. But yeah, so
smacking into the microphone, just
right. It's so weird. What's interesting though is over the past like 6 months, I've had some speaking gigs that were more geared towards leadership. And I have so much to say about that, but that made me nervous. That I was more intimidated. So to answer your question, just not to seem like I could just speak, like I had a moment,
Yeah.
I had to take a lot of magnesium supplements to calm me down. Cause I was like, there was that moment of, can I do this? And I had to really, really get an ironclad mindset and remind myself. And one of the things that I would do is I would make a list of what is true. Because I knew certain things were true, that I had spoken so many times, that I had done 300 podcasts, that I had good things to share, so I would write down the things I knew were true so that the other things didn't take over and take a life of their own.
I love that's like almost a better way of doing affirmations is
is
just simply what is true.
What is true.
Facts, because it's undeniable.
Yes.
No, I have that sometimes for if there's, being in freelance, so being in filmmaking, like you'll have the occasional like rough client who's not happy or whatever. And that's where, of course, the imposter syndrome can just like sneak in and just be like, hey, remember me? I'm like, no, hold up. Like mostly I get all caps emails with how much they love it and stuff. And I've been doing this for so long, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're just fine. How long have you been public speaking?
Well, my first time at the Panera Bread, I guess, was 8 years ago.
8 years, yes.
Yeah. But being paid, I think the first time I got paid was maybe like 2017.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that, you have years of it under your belt. So but it's interesting, like taking, that you're kind of leveling up when there's a little bit of that, like, fear, which I think is good. Being uncomfortable is how you have to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kept reminding myself of that. This is me outside my comfort zone. Yeah. But I bought those Calm.
It's hard. It's hard.
Those Calm gummies?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I was like buying those from Amazon in like giant bulk packages. It's like, we're just going to take these every day. Yeah.
I think I don't remember where I heard it, but the whole, when you're nervous, twisting it to be like, because it's all energy, right? Like,
yeah.
What if I was actually just really excited and this is going to go great, and the energy that I'm feeling it feels like nerves could just be, I'm super excited to do this and this is going to be awesome. And that really, because I've done public speaking a couple times, just like on panels and stuff, and it's terrifying. But then as soon as I get into it, it's great.
Yeah.
But it's like leading up to the stage is terrifying. But then as soon I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to do this.
I get so excited that I find that once someone introduces me, I start running up.
You did. Yeah. I remember that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. You ran up. I had to follow you.
And I don't even know how to not run. Like, I don't even know I'm running till after I'm done. And then I'm like, oh my God, I ran up. Like, I'm so excited. Yeah. I mean, it's stupid. Yeah. It's like a Price is Right. I got called.
No, but I mean, that sets the tone. Like, that's really, I think that can feed into the, like, oh shit, like she's excited. Like, okay, cool. Like we're
doing this.
This is going to happen. How do you know when you're really like connecting with an audience while you're speaking?
Well, I think when you get a lot of feedback, when people are laughing at the right time and crying, I get people that cry.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes I try to weave in, some story in the beginning, and then later I refer to the story so that we have a private joke. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like
kind of a stand-up comedian technique.
Yeah. And so then they're in on it with me. And when they laugh at that, because then I knew they heard the first part. You know what I mean? It's like, totally. Then that's really fun.
No, that's great. I think that's, oh my God, that's such a good technique to use too. Just like connecting and then having like a thing that you can be like, you remember that? That was fun. We had that.
Right. And in my speech, like for an example, I talk about TikTok. The very first story that I tell is a TikTok. And then later on, I talk about being in the beach and then afraid I'm going to get bowled over by the waves. And I'm like, I don't want to end up on someone's TikTok, And everybody laughs because they
a
remember me
running
telling
theme.
about TikToks. Yes. Yeah. I
I
do
love
love the
that.
TikTok.
So that's a good tip if you're gonna put a speech together or have something that's impactful, making it
Yeah.
cyclical a little bit with some jokes. I love that.
Yeah. So they're
This may
on an
happen
inside
if
joke.
I'm with it enough at the end of the podcast. Who knows? We might have a throwback.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's funny.
So you mentioned NLP, neuro linguistic programming. Can you first, for people that don't know, define it, and then also how's it affected your life?
Oh, yeah. So neurolinguistic programming is really how your mind uses imagery and words to create your reality. So everybody has a little bit different reality. And when we're trained in NLP, it's sort of like we get the map. We get to understand how people are creating reality and then help them learn to shift it. So I experienced NLP when I was in high school. My mom died in a car accident. And I had a really hard time after it, as any kid would.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
and my dad
As
got
well.
remarried, and at the time it seemed to me like he had moved on with his life and I couldn't move on. I was devastated, and I went to college, but all of my college experience really was a blur. Like I just was so devastated, and I felt very alone. And in my child mind, I blamed a lot of that on them. And so over the next 20 years, I had developed a lot of patterns in that as self-preservation patterns. So, I wouldn't want to, I don't want to get hurt again. So my relationships were very strained and almost weird, to be honest. I was married and divorced before I was like 27. And like I just struggled so much. And I went to therapy and therapy, and I meditated, and then I got into like energy people. And I mean, I was doing everything you could do. And I was so angry, like angry. If you met me on the street, you wouldn't think I was so angry. Do you know what I mean? If you met me on the street, like people were like, Betsy's really optimistic and happy. I'm sure everybody thought I had just handled it. But I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I would be alone and I would be pissed. You know what I mean? Like just
The
pissed.
alone is when it really kicks in. Yeah.
Yes. And somebody said to me, I was telling a friend, and they said, have you ever gone to have NLP? And I said, I've heard of NLP, but I mean, I've done every crazy dingbat thing and thing that made, every energy, like I've done everything.
Yeah.
And they were like, just try it. And so I went, and within 45 minutes, everything changed. Like everything changed. I never went back. First session, one session, 45 minutes. And I was like, what happened? Like, I remember I was finished and I was so dizzy, and I was like, what did you do? What happened? And they were like, just wait a few days and I'll call you back. And I mean, my whole life changed. And I was like, I need to learn this so I can do it to myself all the time. And then it got to where I had learned it so well. I was like, I need to teach other people how to, like, I want everybody in the world to know how to do this.
Yeah,
because
so
we can
really
do it
came
to
from
ourselves.
a true place of like it transformed you, and
It
you
really
now want
did.
to transform other people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that tracks for who you are.
Yeah. Yes. And that really changed the trajectory of my life, where then that whole experience became I had to go through all that so that I could come to a place where I had changed and grown and had something to share.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a speaker when I was a little kid, but what was I going to speak about? Well, I had to go through something and get through it, not go around it, not ignore the parts that I didn't like.
Yeah, you don't really become a professional speaker by being like, hey, you guys had much struggle in your life? I haven't.
Yeah. My life's been really good, and the parts that weren't good, I just ignored.
Yeah, exactly. I can help you with yours.
Yeah. So that's really how all that came to be.
No, it's awesome.
And now I have a thriving institute, and it's so fun. People they're going out and changing the world,
When, I mean, talk about a ripple effect. My God, like when you can affect that much, you're going to be,
isn't it cool?
You have a global impact basically.
Yeah. And like, not that I want to disappear, because I don't, but if something were to happen and I get hit by a bus, people might not know who I am like forever, but people will know. There will be a thread of what I've done that lingers on, even if people don't know where it came from. To me, that's like the coolest freaking thing.
That's one of my favorite things about video content is
Yeah.
Like putting, and making stuff like this, making that kind of motivational, positive stuff is like, that it's going to be around forever. And, it's like, there's just a footprint there. And B, like I have a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and I'm not going to look like this in, 20, 30 years,
Right.
but like, there's
Yeah.
going to be, I'm like, this is what I was like young. And
Yes. Isn't
there's
that
evidence
crazy?
there. It's nuts.
I will tell you,
It blows my mind every
a,
time I think about it.
it is a little depressing though. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, man, I was cute. Why was I worried at that time? I would love to be that skinny now.
Well, like,
but
I have like parkour videos out there, and I'm like, I used to be
Oh,
like
really? Yeah.
really talented in flipping and stuff, and now it takes
Right.
so much energy to do. I can still do a backflip, but man, I see stars afterwards.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. I used to compete in weightlifting.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
yeah, and won a bronze medal in the Pan Ams. And
How old were you when you did that?
44. Yeah.
I remembered that was actually my next question. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was that age. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Which made it cooler to me.
Oh, 100%. That's how much
Yeah.
did you lift to win?
I don't remember at that.
Yeah.
I don't remember at that
Something
specific. I mean,
ridiculous.
it was, it was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
7 years ago.
That was, let's
So
see.
yeah.
What was on Ninja Warrior? I think it was 2014. So it's been a bit. Even
Yeah.
actually,
I know a lot of people that are weightlifters would know their total and they would know it. They'd be like, I can't believe you don't remember.
to like the point two.
Yes. And
Yeah,
I know that that's probably a thing. It wasn't enough for me to brag. So I just don't remember, but it was for me. You know what I mean? It was like cool for me and like this awesome thing that I dared to do. I remember on the way to one of the competitions, I cried the whole way there. My husband was like, what are we doing? Like, you don't have to do it. You're crying. And I was like, oh no, it's okay. Like, I'm just crying because I'm scared, but I'm going to get it out before I get there. He was like, this
totally.
is
Crying
so
in the
weird.
car so you don't cry in the competition.
Totally. Yes.
That's
it's
great.
fine. I was like, it's fine. Everything's fine. Yeah.
It's all fine. The house is burning around you. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. I can handle this.
And then you got a bronze, which is huge.
And then I got a bronze medal.
That's insane.
And that's what I mean when I say, like, just do it. Like, it's okay if you're scared. Like, it's okay if you cry. It's okay if, but just keep doing it. There was this saying that that Amelia Earhart had on the side of her airplane that said, make all your decisions. I might be butchering it, but make your decisions with your stick forward. So like, don't slow down, so like, get to the competition, just cry on your way. It's fine. Yeah. Like,
I love that. No, one of my I think it's from, I want to say Marie Forleo, but it's just a good saying. Do it scared.
Yes.
Just because it's nothing's ever going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be like lined up. And if it is lined up, like you don't even know what to do with it because it's
right.
So just doing it scared, doing it when you're not ready. Again, like I could be doing this. I have a camera here, but I'm trying to get this podcast done. So I bought a little webcam that actually does, 1080p video instead of my laptop. And I'm just doing it because I know I need to get it done. Yeah. It's okay if it's not perfect. Nobody actually cares that much. And
people like it better when it's not perfect.
Right.
It's true. Yeah.
No, but like again, it's the whole like making it doable. Like,
yes,
this is doable for me, and because I have a shoot after this, so I'd have to go, break down the camera, put it on different things. Like, there's so much effort, there's so much extra stuff there. Where getting it done, just doing it with however it comes together is more important to me than it being polished and perfect.
Yeah, I ask myself a lot, like, okay, I got to do this thing. What's the path of least resistance?
Right,
and then I do it that way.
Yeah.
But I'll say words wrong and stuff. I don't even edit them out. I'm like, okay, well, I just said that word. Have fun with that.
The only thing that I'll edit is if there's like more than like a, 3 to 5 second pause where it's just kind of awkward.
Sure.
I'll cut that out. But like, other than that, no, like so it's actually funny. Speaking of backflips and stuff, my last guest was my buddy Lauren, he's been on like 13 seasons of Ninja Warrior. And that's cool. I had my questions for him, I lived with him for a while, and it was like we're good friends and stuff, but I had kind
Yeah.
of where I wanted to go with it. And I
Yeah.
finished them, and then we just ended. He's just like, "Are we like? Do you want to keep going?" He's like, "You've been fucking around with ChatGPT at all?" And I was like, "I have." And then we just talked for like a half hour on random stuff. I'm like, "I'm
Yeah.
leaving this all in. This is great."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. I need to listen to that. Yeah.
No, that's super fun though. So speaking of the weightlifting thing, is there what kind of with your prep on that, what goes into like an effective training program when you're preparing for a competition?
Well, I had a trainer,
Yeah.
and she put together my programming. And the basic idea really is that you build up and then you go really light right before the competition for a
Mm,
couple of weeks before the competition, so that then on the day of competition, you have a lot in the tank, you
yeah.
know? I think, for me as somebody that wasn't, I hadn't been weightlifting. I had been active my whole life, but hadn't been like a Olympic style weightlifter my whole life. And so for me, it was almost like a mental thing. Like I have to be somebody different to do this.
Yeah.
And who am I? Because I had been this person, and now I got to be a little bit. Now I got to be an athlete.
Right.
And so when you're an athlete, or when you are a creator, or when you are whatever you are, there is a essence to it, right? A being.
Yeah, there's a
And
voice to it.
yes. And I
Yeah.
think that for me, that was almost the hardest thing of like not shrinking back, but stepping forward and being like, I am going to be this. This is who I am now. So
Yeah.
the other day, this is how different I am now. The other day, I was like, I'm going to make bread. And then I was like, that's going to be my new personality. I'm a bread maker. My husband was like, maybe have like something that's more productive than that. I was like, I don't know. I could be like
That
a
was me the first
homesteader.
time I had a craft beer. I was like, this is my personality now.
Yes, totally. Yes. He was like, it used to be an athlete and now you're like a bread maker. Okay.
Like all of my friends know not to like if there's like a Coors or a Bud or something, I'm just like, yeah, Noah has no interest in that. It's just
Yes. Yeah.
he's drinking his double IPA with his nose up.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen,
Totally.
my wife got me for what was it, Father's Day a couple years, or I think it was my birthday. Said as a shirt that said, I'm quietly judging your beer selection.
Yeah. Totally. That's
How's
funny.
bread making going on that
Yeah.
point?
I mean, I'm into focaccia now. So like I'm really branching out.
You're getting a whole collection of them. That's great.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's funny.
Hot Ones has actually gotten me into my hot sauce journey, and
Oh yeah.
we have for another Father's Day gift, she got me Da Bomb, and so now we've had a couple friends come over. I'm like, who's gonna do just a
Oh my
just a
God.
tiny dab of Da Bomb, and we always are
I
just like
would
in
not.
pain for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, I would not have any interest.
Are there any parallels for you with the weightlifting journey and with public speaking?
Yeah, I think that one of the things my trainer used to say to me, especially, and if somebody's listening, the kind of lifting I did was the snatch and the clean and jerk. So like if you think of like bending down, your arms are really wide and then the weight is like over your head. And there is a moment of that where you have to go really slow
Mm,
until you get to your knees. And once you get to your knees, you can explode up. And she would say, you have to go slow. You got to go fast to go slow. So you
mm,
got to go like, you got to like learn it. You got to get your body, your nervous system used to that whole experience, So like go slow and then explode out and go fast. You can't do it if you don't go slow first. Go slow to go fast. And so that's really when I look at my whole journey of the podcast and of my business and of so many things in my life. We got to go slow to go fast. We got to give ourselves a chance to be a beginner. And I think as adults and as creators, like we don't want to be beginners.
right.
And that's what holds us back. But if we let ourselves be a beginner and let ourselves be scared and let ourselves try it and let ourselves screw up, right? I'm using air quotes, like screw up. Then all of a sudden we can go fast because we had the time where we went slow and we figured it out and we moved through all of that junk.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I see like that learning of having that experience taught me so much just about living my life and how to approach things.
Yeah, no, I think to your point, I think so many people get held back from doing things that they're interested in because of you have to be a beginner again.
Yeah. It's hard to be a
I
beginner
love
as
it.
an adult.
Oh, it
Do
is
you? Yeah.
super hard.
Yeah.
I love it. I just, let's see, last year, I was working the TV production for the Avalanche playoff, the Stanley Cup Finals, and
Yeah.
I'd never seen a hockey game before in my life,
Oh,
and
really?
I got instantly hooked.
Yeah.
I'm completely hooked. But now, because I've always been athletic and I've kind of wanted to keep it up, but my thing is I have to have fun while I'm working out,
Yeah.
which is why parkour works so well.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
I'm not, I can't take those impacts anymore. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of aged out of it a little bit, which I know that there's some people that are my age that are still doing it, but I had kids and I just don't, I don't have it in me
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So saw hockey and I was like, oh my God, I've always been decent on skates. I could like get into this.
Right.
And so I'm now in a recreational hockey league, and I've been just, my buddy's better than me and he's been teaching me, and he's a good teacher too, but like
Yeah.
going, like being like, I had no idea how to play hockey, and I've been getting
Yeah.
into it, and I scored my first goal a couple weeks ago, and
Oh my
like
God, that's cool.
I'm like, but like not afraid to be a big, I love
Yeah.
starting, like, oh my God, like there's the things that you do every day. I feel like when you have a chosen career, like you've put your 10,000 hours in, or you're working on your 10,000 hours,
Yeah.
and you just, it's in your routine. So like
Right.
going back to square one, like I love baseball, but I I tried out for a rec baseball thing, and they're like, I was a catcher, and I was like, they're like, when's the last time you played? And I was like, middle school. And then I asked the pitcher, I was like, when's the last time you played? He's like, I played some college. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Okay.
Like, throw it in. I dropped like half of them. It was so bad. So I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
can't. I'm not. Baseball doesn't work for the level that I am, but hockey's great. Like I'm the youngest person
Right.
on the team, and it's like longevity. But again, you have to be okay with being a beginner to get into the situation like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And having fun, like that you have a friend that can kind of
Yeah.
help, and all that makes it
It's
just so
no, I
much
mean,
easier.
and now like I have right now I'm doing it once a week. When the summer league starts, I'm going to be doing it Wednesdays and Fridays. So like
Yeah.
twice a week. I'm sweating my ass off. I
Yeah.
haven't
That's
been
fun.
this tired and sore since Ninja Warrior training. Like
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
What got you into, have you, like, were you interested in weightlifting for a while, or like what got you into that?
Yeah. I mean, I was always athletic,
Yeah.
I ran a marathon when I was, in my early 20s. I
Nice.
competed in bodybuilding competitions when I was in college. So, like early 90s, 91,
So the
92.
gene was already,
Um,
or always kind of in you.
yeah, like I always was into pushing myself physically, always
Yeah.
felt fun to me.
That's great.
And then I got into CrossFit like everybody did. 2009, I got into CrossFit, and I actually opened my own CrossFit gym. And
Nice.
yeah, and so I had that. I didn't own it that long, but that's really, I had it like 3 years and then I sold it. But I got into,
That's
I could
solid.
just go lift whenever I wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I moved into my garage after I sold it, and that's really when I got really focused, because I sold the gym. So I was like, what are we going to do here?
Right.
We're going to
What
we're
do I
going to
do
get
with
a
all my
goal.
time?
I know. Yeah, and that's when I really started my business,
Yeah.
doing what I do now.
Oh, wow. So, okay. So you had the CrossFit gym before you were a public speaker.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such an interest. You've just like weaved back. And I love, because like, you're in the business attire, and you have the professional look. And I love
Yeah.
I'm a badass weightlifter, and I've done CrossFit, and I'm also
Yeah.
like standing on stage, and most people would shrivel up at that point, but like
Right.
there's so
Yeah.
many layers to you.
It's the most fun. If something happens when you're on stage, it's almost like you get to be the best version of you.
Yeah.
And then you can get off stage and go live your boring life. But like for that moment, you're like, oh my God, I have this thing. It's funny. My daughter, the first time she ever heard me speak, I got hired for like a huge event here in Atlanta, and they wanted a motivational speaker to be like part of in the park.
Yeah.
And so my daughter went to the festival, and so she saw me speak. And later I heard her talk to somebody, and they said, "Did you see your mom speak?" I mean, she was probably like 15 or something. And she said, yeah, she said all the stuff she always says to us at home, except people were listening.
Maybe it actually will sink into her when there's like, oh, she's like, this is can help people. I should probably
Right?
listen to this. That's funny.
Totally. Yeah. It's so funny. And now she's 21, and
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
like, it's funny because she was talking to somebody at work and someone said, well, what's your mom look like? Because they were talking about hairdos or whatever. And she said, I just Googled you to find it. That made me laugh so
Right.
much. Like, I was like, oh, okay.
The
I was
online
like, that
presence.
is so
Oh my
weird.
God, that's great.
Yeah.
What does your mom look like? Here. Here's her
And then she
website.
showed them a very young picture of me. My first started in my I had taken that they put on my book, Start Small, Live Big. And it's the greatest picture anybody ever took of me. And so
Right.
when I got those pictures taken, I was like, this is the greatest picture. I had prints made and I gave them to everybody for Christmas because I was like, there will never be another photo. And I stand by that today. There is never. So that's the photo she showed them. I was like, they're about to be disappointed
Right.
when I swing by.
Like, what kind of catfishing is this?
Yes, totally. She's gray now. What in the yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my God. So it's kind of we covered so much, and that was great. Man, that was a wide range of subjects.
Yeah, this was so fun.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of I mean, you're like the best at motivating and getting people into a good headspace. Do you have any last words you want to kind of leave people with?
Yeah, I think just think about what it is you really want to do. Like that you really want to do, the thing that lights you up, not what other people tell you should do or what you think your parents think you should do, but what is something that you really want to do and just take one action towards it. You don't have to show up on Oprah's couch in a week, but you could do something to start moving in that direction. And what I always say to people is it may not be that next thing that takes you all the way to the top, but that's going to be the stepping stone. That's going to be the thing that like begins the whole, I'm not touring Panera Breads, but that's the thing that like, maybe I should.
I'm telling you, this Panera tour,
there's something there,
there's
but
something
that's
there.
the thing, that like begins to create something new in your life. So think about what you really want. That would be my biggest thing. What really lights you up?
Yeah. That's the best way to live life possible is being excited about what you're doing. And I go through a lot of bullshit and other stuff to keep the journey of that alive, of like enjoying what I do and following passions and saying yes to stuff. And like, that's the most important thing. And, it's a happy life. It's because like life is always hard, right? Like no matter what,
there's always hard things.
life happens. But if your day to day can be happy and passionate and excited and, you get that flame going, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. And that's how come you live such a good, happy life and you're able to create and do things because that's how your outlook and how you see things.
It's
so
very
powerful. Yeah. You're such a good example of that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, this podcast is that. It's just like, hey, I want, I'm not creating as much as I wanted to. And a lot of it is just for a paycheck. And I want to be able to do, to keep my flame alive and to, it's again, stuff like this. This has been great today and I'm motivated and like, just when like what's in your mind is shared by somebody else who's also doing it, because sometimes it's kind of a lonely journey as a creative and even as a freelancer, because you don't have like the the company culture around you to create that in what you're doing is huge. So that's been really fun with this and motivating myself by doing the show.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So
thank you so much for having me on. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to roll out the red carpet for you. Let everybody know what you got going on in your life.
Yeah. So you can find me anywhere. On Instagram is usually where I hang out. It's just at Betsy Pake. You can go to my website, betsypake.com. I have a Facebook group where I go in live every week and share something on Monday mornings to kind of kick off your Monday. And of course, you can listen to The Art of Living Big.
She's on everything.
I'm everywhere.
The good at getting the message out is a hard thing to do, and you do it well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on. This has been a total blast, and it was good to see you again. And I'm excited for everything you got going on.
Yeah, thanks so much for thinking of me. I appreciate being on. It was fun to see you.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
See ya.